Hmm? Well, good morning, Creative Life. Here we are again. This is Jesse Jennings at my desk for the second Sunday of the. I've had to do this year because of a power outage, this one due to Hurricane Beryl. And I want to say, first of all, that all of you who are still sitting in the dark, which I think is probably around 20% of our congregation at this point on Sunday morning, unless something wonderful happened to you overnight, well, you're in our thoughts. And if there's anything we can do for you, we're here. Um, we anticipate the power of everything being back to normal for next Sunday, the 21st, and you'll want to be here for sure in person to hear Reverend David Dewhurst speak. He gets to do that, or has to do that, depending on how you look at it, a couple of times a year, and his next turn at bat is next week. So I invite you just to relax. It's been quite a week, hasn't it, since last we met? And nobody expected what we got really in the way that we got it. So we're going to just close our eyes and take a moment here and relax and be still and know that just like the eye of the hurricane, there's a place of stillness and centeredness and balance in the midst of every storm. Around that center, our emotions swirl, our feelings gather, and sometimes there's thunder and lightning, other time blue and cloudless skies. But always there's change around that center. So we step into that center where there is no change, no time, no space, no needs, no wants, where nothing has ever been wrong. We feel this as our home base, as our eternal nature that we carry into all our activities, all our challenges, all our choices. In this time together, there is renewal and refreshment for us. There's peace and balance for us, and it extends past this time into our days, into our choices, into the fullness of our lives. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. I invite you now to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, letting my words act as your own for your own inner acceptance and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I become ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words, I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the kingdom of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, now I say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only constructive, positive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing this idea is already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words: I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now I call to mind the face of someone who has touched my life in powerful, wonderful ways. This can be a friend, a family member, teacher of mine. It's someone who is not physically present with me here today. I turn toward this face I see in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes to the world around me, turn joyfully to the people next to me, in whichever room I find myself in, sharing my gratitude and confidence with them by saying, I'm grateful for the good in your life. All right. Well, we'll take a moment and stretch here. This is week 2 in a series based, in part anyway, on the writings of Henry David Thoreau, who was with us from 1817 to 1862, and he was part of the transcendentalist movement, which is well worth looking into. Other notable members included Elizabeth Peabody and, of course, Ralph Waldo Emerson, William Ellery Channing of the Unitarian movement. And the Transcendentalists, if you like the Transcendentalists, you're going to love the Romantic poets because they kind of go hand in hand. They were more or less at the same period of time, and they had a similar metaphysical viewpoint on life. They revered nature. They were saddened to see the rise of the industrial era where it stepped on nature. They valued personal spiritual experience, the mystical, the inner divine, and they drew some of their inspiration from Eastern writings, the Vedas. And Thoreau was known as I mentioned last week, he was considered kind of an eccentric. John Updike called him a crank, and then went on to say that he may be that Walden, his Journal of Time in the Woods for a couple of years, might go on to be the most revered and little read book since the Bible. That's how strongly he felt about the value of Thoreau's work. Today we're going to focus on a metaphor of his that I think you'll find useful. I think you find it applies to you just by virtue of the fact you're interested in what we're doing here in a teaching like this one, where he speaks about moving to the beat of a different drummer. He says, if we do not keep pace with our companions, if one does not keep pace with their companions, it may be because that person hears a different drummer. Let us step to that music, however measured or far away it might be. The first thing that jumps to mind about that is he's talking about a different drummer, not a different drum. And I've often heard there's a popular song that Linda Ronstadt, I think it was, you and I march to the beat of a different drum. It scans better as a song lyric, but it's actually the drummer and not the drum. And why I think that's significant is the drum is nature. It doesn't need to change. It doesn't need to be replaced. The drummer is the individual who interprets nature. Um, let's look at it this way for a moment. Your nature, my nature, human nature, our personal nature is not in need of repair. In many spiritual teachings, it is said to be in need of great repair. That the divine nature is perfect and loving and kindly and balanced and wholesome, and human nature is depraved and corrupt. And if you give people an inch, they'll take a mile, and you need to regulate behavior strictly and so on. What the transcendentalist movement in every era that there's been one, which is every era, what it has advanced is the idea that there's nothing wrong with our nature. There's nothing wrong with human nature. If there's anything wrong, it's with human information leading to human choices. We can operate off bad data, bad data. We can interpret experiences in our own lives in a self-shaming and self-deprecating kind of way, and then carry that story with us into adulthood. And our compensating mechanisms, as we've talked about many times, for that story. If I feel I have some deficiency as a person, as a member of the human family, I'm going to work to compensate for those deficiencies. I'm going to work madly hard to not have those deficiencies show, which is going to get in the way of my authenticity as a person and showing up in my relationships and my communications as a fresh and spontaneous being. Does that make sense? In other words, I'm always strategizing behind the scene. What does this person think of me? Who's talking about? We talked about this a few weeks ago, and how made a joke about how all the people that you embarrassed yourself in front of in fifth grade get together once a week and talk about you, which of course they don't, but there's a part of us that thinks they might. So the nature that we have, though, is pure and uncorrupt and beautiful. All we can do is kind of obscure our view of it, and this is why Thoreau, I quoted him last week, is saying it's not so much what we look at as what we see that makes a difference. And at first glance, you'll say, well, what's the difference between what I look at and what, I see what I'm looking at. Yeah, but you see it through perceptive filters. We see everything through perceptive filters. So we want to be aware of this in life. We want to be aware of our own story and the compensating mechanisms and the checks and balances and stuff that we put in place based on our own story. It also goes to the idea of orthodoxy. Ortho is a Greek prefix that means basically correct, upright, right, um, repaired, corrected. Uh, Something's out of whack, and so it's aligned by some outer agency. Orthodoxy is corrected belief. Dox is, I think that's Latin. Uh, I think they put Greek in Latin. I could be mistaken. I think they put a Greek front on a Latin back. But I think dox means belief. So if you're familiar with the Christian doxology, um, we all believe in one God. It's a statement of belief. So orthodox is a corrected belief. Um, the transcendentalists practice heterodoxy. We in this teaching practice hetero. What does hetero mean? It means other, other, other belief, non-conforming, um, unexpected, to wit, spontaneous belief. How do I know God is operating in my life? Through my interpretation of events. As I grow as a person, my interpretation of events changes. Therefore, the impact of God's presence in my life changes in my own view. Our needs and wants are different. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child, acted as a child. Now I am older. I put away the things of a child, except a few of them keep around. Ping pong is good. And so I make a different set of demands on life. Consequently, my belief has changed in values, in what are the important things in life. Um, when I was a baby, one of the things I valued the most, all of us do, is sleep. You go through a long phase of your life where you don't need a lot of sleep. Sleep is it's kind of more of a bother. It's an interruption because you want to be working or playing or consciously engaging with the world. The older you get, the more you value sleep. We go through these phases. We go through these changes. You and I just got to go through one where for some period of time we sat in the dark, in the heat, in our homes. I only know of a couple of people, and I'm not going to call their names, but I only know of a couple of people in our center who never lost power in this week. And I joke with them, some in my mind, about what was in their consciousness, that they should feel very proud of themselves that they didn't create being. No, that's nonsense. Okay, we didn't create. It's much more complicated than that. You know that. You know I'm kidding. Okay, so uh we I got to experience a new relationship with my home. All of us do. It looks different by candlelight. Oh, you're not supposed to light candles. Well, anyway, it looks different by lantern light. And do you know they make these lanterns that have a USB plug in the back? You can plug your phone into, and while the lantern's shining, it's charging your phone, so you don't have to go sit in the car. It's an amazing thing. But my point is, you see, our what's important to us changes. You take light and air conditioning, even in this part of the world, you take it for granted. Most of the time, you get up, you flick on the light, you get about your day. When it's not there, well, all of a sudden it becomes a need, and the more time that passes, the greater a need it becomes. Well, that's a heterodoxical moment for us. That's where our beliefs have left the norm. And if you ask the self of you 2 weeks ago what it thought would be important today, it would not have thought of this. So I think you're a heterodoxical person if you want to think of yourself that way. You march to the sound. First of all, you don't really march. You sort of dance. You sort of move in a shimmying kind of way across the landscape. We're much more um, tai chi about it than we are lockstep. But definitely to the sound of a different drummer. What is our drummer? Well, you know, on the face of it, you might say, well, now I'm a student of this. I'm a student of Ernest Holmes, or I'm a student of the New Thought teaching, or, I used to be enthralled with this, now I'm with that. But what the New Thought teaching would invite you to do is become a student of yourself. Become a student of yourself. And there's a quote I put in the weekly email this week from E.B. White, who wrote an essay on the 100th anniversary of the publication, not the writing, but the publication of Walden, where he praises Thoreau. And in there, he said that Thoreau uh, retired from the world, and not so much to have a different opinion uh, of his neighbors, or to find the truth of his neighbors or his culture, but to explore himself, to explore his interior regions, to get away from the noise and the tumult of civilization, even as existed in his time, to come kind of home to himself. So this is what we're called to do: is come to the divine presence within ourselves. And the Ernest Holmeses and people like this of the world, all of these teachers that we reference as we go through the years together at Creative Life, they're all saying, look within. They're saying, look within, and they're saying, when I looked within, each of these teachers is saying, when I looked within, here's what I found, and maybe you'll find something similar. They describe a landscape to us that appeals to us, and it encourages us to go into this stillness, and to do our own work, and to not necessarily conform to the stories that we're being told about how things are, which are often coming to us from people who've experienced great woundedness and don't know what to do about it, who've experienced great grief and haven't really processed it, who are angry about not what's so, but what was once so, that's being projected onto the current landscape. So self-awareness and this different drummer business is about making our own choices, making them spontaneously in the moment, and having them aligned to a set of inner values that we ourselves have chosen. Is there room for divergence and creativity? And all, of course there is. We just have to have enough uh, parity, I guess you'd say, enough congruity with each other to be able to understand each other. Which brings me to this. I found this funny. Whenever uh, Reverend Lisa sent out a meme to a few of us about a certain guy with a National Weather Service broadcast who for years now, whenever there's a hurricane coming any place, it's like they strap this guy to a pier, pier, in the harbor, as the winds kick up and the waves and all, and he's shouting into the camera as his hat's blowing, his slicker's blowing off, and he's getting drenched, and so it's not good news when you see this guy come up, and sure enough, there he was. Only this time he had what I was watching, he had a friend uh, who who wasn't on the pier in Galveston like where they usually put him. He was in Kema on the boardwalk. And why I'm bringing this up is it's always funny when national programming gets a hold of Texas place names. Um, and you expect them to do something random with Anahuac or Refugio or certainly Mahia. Uh, but I never thought I would have heard Kima pronounced Kama, Kama. So this guy's down on the boardwalk in Kama, Texas. And what was funny was they'd go to commercial, and somebody would evidently take him aside and say it's pronounced Kima. And he'd come back on, and the first couple of times he said it, he would have it right, and then he'd go back to Kama. So what is this telling us? He wasn't doing this out of disrespect, and he wasn't doing it out of great ignorance. He's probably doing it out of conditioning, because there's some place in this guy's life that's pronounced something like that, or he's conversant in a language that has words like that in it. I don't know. Anyway, we didn't see this coming, this storm, quite the way that it did. They said it would be mostly a rain event. Up where we were, it was largely a wind event, and that's why we lost power and so on. And a lot of people are very angry today because of the local utility providers. So I wanted to bring this up, because here's a way that you can march to the beat of a different drummer: is don't join the blame game. Don't join the blame game. Everybody is doing the best they can. Oh my gosh, what a relief it is to realize that everybody's doing the best they can. And people will argue with you, man. I mean, right now there are probably somebody out there who are saying, yeah, well, I know an exception to that. I know some people who aren't doing those Americans. It doesn't matter. It matters how you feel about it, for your own peace of mind, to believe that everybody's, and you know what, when you believe that everybody's doing the best they can, they start doing better. They start doing better for you. I can't explain why that works or how that works, but it works. It absolutely works. Everybody's doing the best they can. And so the people from the utility companies are out there, and they're doing the best. And as somebody pointed out, not one of our people, but somebody in the reporting, said that most of the down power lines were the result of trees on private property, and there's nothing anybody can do about that unless you eliminate trees. And if we think about, oh, that's a sensible move, let's take down all the trees, never mind what it'll do for the climate overall, or the landscape, or just the beauty of nature, or all the birds that nest in those trees, that run up and down those trees. We want to keep the power on. Let's take down all the trees. Well, that's a nonsensical idea, isn't it? So what there is give and take. What there is we live in an experience where from time to time trees are going to fall on power lines, and they're going to fall, and somebody's going to have to do something about it. And that's just part of the human condition. That's part of the human nature that's really not wrong. It just has change in it. As I said at the top, at the center of that change is the changeless, but around that change, sometimes there's fierce wind. Sometimes there's big upset and big upheaval. So what do? We listen for that drum. We listen for that sound, a steady heartbeat of a sound that moves through all experience, saying, you're enough. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. That wonderful meme that goes around from time to time that says, in the end, it's going to be all right. And if it's not all right, this isn't the end. The end of the story, the end of the storm. The end of the storm, there's a rainbow. The end of the storm, the sky clears. It's going to be all right. So we leave the blame game side. We leave blaming ourselves. If only we had done something different. If only we hadn't bought that freezer full of food just last week, what were we thinking? It's all right. It's going to be all right. Something will replenish it. Something will come and take care. It will balance out all needs. It will fill all voids. Thoreau's friend Emerson said nature abhors a vacuum, and it doesn't so much abhor a vacuum, really, as it just fills it. It doesn't have a feeling about the vacuum. It doesn't make the vacuum wrong. It just fills wherever there appears to be a need. So in your life going forward, listen for the sound of that that different that different drummer, that different part of you that remembers the back of all change is the changeless, that part of you that remembers that everything is still and peaceful and balanced at the center of the soul. And remember to go there. If you're reading along with Reverend David in the daily guides in Science Mind magazine for this month, written by Reverend Josh Reeves of Mile High Church, I love his work, and he says over and over again, in one way or another, spiritual practice, spiritual practice, spiritual practice. Do what we know to do. Um, Go to that place when you don't need to go to that place. Go to that place when the sun's shining and everything's working and everything's clicking right along. Go there and gather up that energy so that you have it in store for when change comes, when change occurs. So with that, I wish you a very happy Sunday as you're, or whenever, whatever time you're watching this. Again, we definitely plan to be back together in person next Sunday, July 21st, when Reverend David Dewhurst is going to speak also in the Thoreau series. Then I'll be back on the 28th to round out the month. Then we move to August for some fun stuff. Among the exciting things, I'm going to go right into a couple of announcements here, and then we'll close with a treatment. In August, Reverend Arthur Johnson is going to be our speaker on the, I believe it's the last Sunday of August. If you've never heard him, and if you have, there's nothing I need to add to this. If you've never heard him speak, you do not want to miss it, especially in person. Of course, he'll be on Facebook and YouTube, but come meet the man. Come put a hug on him in person at the center. On this coming Wednesday night, Wednesday, the 17th of July, the Reverend Dr. Cynthia Ramirez Lindenmeyer and Reverend Katie Rox Brigatti and I, the three of us, will be in a conversation on sacred activism and a discussion group that the other two are putting together that's going to start sometime in August, based on an 8-part syllabus that Dr. Cynthia has written on sacred activism and what it means and all of the different implications of this. She is a remarkable person. What took a class, how I met her, she took the Essential Art of Psalms class online, and also in the Holmes Institute took a class from me. And she was just ordained a CSL minister. She affiliated with us, and she was ordained into CSL ministry just in the last couple of weeks. But she has a long ministerial career prior to that, and was minority admissions officer at West Point. She's a West Point graduate. She's got degrees from Duke and Princeton in their divinity school programs. You don't want to miss her anyway. And she's great fun, and she lives in Florida now. So that's this Wednesday at 7 o'clock on Facebook Live, and we're working out the logistics. But what you need to know is it'll be 7 o'clock Wednesday night on Facebook Live. We have book studies other nights of the week. To read more about these, see our weekly emails, which most of you get. If you don't get them, send me an email, info@creativelife.org. We'll be sure to get you signed up. And also, please remember the center in your financial giving. This is the second Sunday so far this year. We're knock wood that it's the last that we've not met in person, so there was no opportunity to give in that way. No basket got passed by you, but we have a PayPal link you can donate through, or you can mail us a check to the center campus address or to our postal box address, both of which will be put in the chat and the comments of that accompany this talk. I think that's pretty much it for here. Huge thanks once again to Reverend Lisa Ryan, Reverend David Dewhurst, Danielle Mercadale, who made this possible, what we're doing here today. So I'm coming to you from home. And let's keep each other in close in prayer and in thought, and all of us who struggle across all our fellows in the human family and life generally that are in any kind of turmoil across the world. Let's know together now there is one life, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere radiant, everywhere whole and well, and complete and thriving. And I invite this presence to make itself known at every aspect of the self, every aspect of the self and its conditions and its experiences. This one makes itself known in relationships. It makes itself known in physical well-being, in emotional balance. It makes itself known financially, commercially, creatively. This one makes itself known in rebuilding fences, putting new shingles on roofs, fixing damaged cars or equipment, moving down tree limbs and healing those trees so that they thrive and stand tall and strong and give us shade and beauty and life. This one is doing whatever needs to be done, known or unknown, exterior or interior. And it's doing it now, easily, even effortlessly, through each of us. Our job is to tend our minds and hearts, take good care of ourselves, and therefore take good care of each other. And it's a job that we're up to. We were built for it. For such a time as this have we come. For this knowing, the way that it manifests in form in and through each one of us. I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done. And so it is. So those of you at home, I invite you to maybe sing a song now, put on a song or sing Let There Be Peace on Earth or something like that, just to kind of sing your way out the service. And once again, it's been an honor to be with you. And I look forward to seeing you in person and online on the 28th, and invite you next week to hear Reverend David on the 21st when he presents in his wonderful, unique way. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.